after capturing most of the Arabian Peninsula with the help of the Wahhabi Islamic warriors.
The Wahhabis were fiercely anti-Western. They want to go back in time to a purer Islam that wasn't threatened by the West.
On the block of freedom. Western oil producers.
Osama bin Laden offered his services to the royals. He told them he could bring the army from Afghanistan to repel the Iraqi invaders from Kuwait.
But the Saudis had a better offer. A $500 million from the United States.
The strict Islamic laws enforced outside of these walls do not apply inside.
Osama took to the streets and mosques to denounce the U.S. royal family and their unholy alliance.
Osama bin Laden this week again lashed out at the Saudi royal family.
We were tracking bin Laden since the early 90s. We stripped him of his citizenship.
Is a rather strange substance in many ways. It disrupts metabolic reactions.
Are they still dangerous, those particles?
So if you concentration in the kidney, it will kill you.
And what's the risk of denial?
They don't deal with complicated stories well, and it's a confusing picture, as you've already heard. It's, you know, there's not a very concise message you can get across.
I would imagine they would know. I mean, it's very much in the public domain that cluster munitions are now.
If he will kill the cell, or he will make some different process in the DNA.
We will never, ever forget our deaths and the destruction of our houses, our cities, and our world. The mysterious and wrongful identity of uranium ruins the sight, breath, and spirit of humanity and the world in a dreadful way. Uranium usually hides its true stable form from nature and occurs as 3 isotopes, U-234, U-235, and U-238, DU, which is in fact the nuclear waste of uranium enrichment process, mainly takes its radioactive characteristics from the isotope. This isotope, unlike U-234 and U-235, is very unstable and fissionable. This isotope, U-238, is usually in concentrations greater than 99% in natural uranium. U-235 is a less dense form of uranium found in concentrations less than 0.7% in natural uranium. If the concentrations of this isotope are increased through any number of separation techniques, it becomes much more fissionable. If the concentration is above 80%, firing a neutron at it will produce the series of self-sustaining nuclear reactions and large release of energy that is the force behind nuclear weapons. On the other hand, when in concentrations of less than 20%, as in a light water reactor, the chemical reactions slow down the energy can be harnessed. Unfortunately, in the process of separating these more fissionable fuels from natural uranium, much excess is left behind in the form of depleted uranium. For example, producing 1 kilogram of 5% enriched uranium leaves behind 10.8 kilograms of DU.
All cancer patients?
All cancer patients. We have about 26 beds for our pediatric oncology patients. Yeah, most of the time it is fully occupied. This is
here in this room.
8 beds. Usually this bed we keep it for the patient with induction. I'm still in the induction phase.
Changing the DNA in these cells and later on the chromosomes and genes to cause a mutation of these cells. And the cells start to divide quickly and to form a cancer.
First time. We've read about, but we didn't see it during our life.
So there is no doubt that it's dangerous for people, human body and environment. Is that right?
Yes, it is dangerous.
Approximately how many patients do you see here every day?
Every day, about between 50 to 80 patients treated as outpatient at the clinic.
Make a comparison between the admission in the last year and the such a time was only one case, and now there is a huge amount, plenty of cases. This is all the complaining of the measles, overcrowded hospital because of there is no beds.
No.
So when was the first use of depleted uranium weapons?
And it is said that it was for the first time in large amount in the Gulf War. That started in 1991. And the U.S. forces made an official announcement about the amount used in the Gulf War. And according to their official announcement, they used about 320 tons of DU in the Gulf War.
Okay.
Then we can make an arrangement.
راح يتصل بالمستشفى. مستشفى خيري يقول لي.
I'm not surprised about it. Uranium isotopes show effect on the immune system. It is possible that reduced immune system allows manifestation of the measles to be much higher than in the normal population.
The outbreak of the 1991 Gulf War and its tragic repetition in 2003 in Iraq are among some of the most horrifying tragedies in human history. When we come to understand how and to what extent depleted uranium weapons and uranium bunker buster bombs were used to penetrate into armored munitions and to spread bloodshed during this war, the depth and the extent of these crimes gives us a shudder. During this war, armored vehicles, military equipment and buildings were all targets of DU shells. They caught fire, burned, and after a while, the ashes containing very small DU dust particles spread into the air, water and soil over a wide swathe of land. This included polluting the Persian Gulf and the agricultural lands around it, in addition to the human and animal populations not only in Iraq but also in other countries. Shortly after the end of war, thousands of veterans who returned from the Gulf developed mysterious, unknown symptoms of a pervasive disease which is now referred to as the Gulf War disease. Among others, we can mention Gerald Mayhew, a member of the 719 Transportation Company from Harlem, New York, whose participation in this war made him and his family victimized by DU. Medical studies have shown respiration of DU particles in the course of time causes disabilities and severe harms to DNA and mRNA codes of the human brain.
That's my wife, Janice.
My symptoms started 3 weeks into the place. I started swelling. At that time, I was getting like 70 headaches a month. We knew about the birth defect for when she was 5 months. That's when I started asking questions. In fact, the doctor, the first question he asked me, being that I came back from the war, was I exposed to anything?
It's going to be enough for the government to say, yes, there's DU in Iraq. Tell me there's DU in Iraq. Don't tell me that I'm lying.
So I want my daughter to see what I wore while I was in a hostile environment. That's it. I will never wear it again. Never. Really and truly, as you see it right here, I can throw it on the floor. Because that's how much it's worth to me. I'd rather burn it.
Do you think that those who are using these weapons are aware of the danger of this weapon, the health effect of this weapon, and deliberately using these weapons?
No, there are some documents coming from inside the U.S. forces that shows that they are aware of the danger. But as an official statement, they have been saying that there should be no danger. And that is why even the American soldiers have not been informed about the DU danger.
This is an aluminum model of one DU tank round. This round would be fired by an Abrams tank. If it was actually uranium rather than aluminum, it would be over 10 pounds of solid uranium. What happens, it moves extremely high velocity. The minute it leaves the bore of the gun, it catches fire. So this rod is a burning rod of uranium. It impacts tremendous forces, unbelievable forces, over this very small diameter. And it's like a blowtorch with tremendous forces that punches right through. Now, as this breaks through and goes into anything, it can be steel, concrete, sandbag bunkers, wood, or anything. Uranium itself is soft. So you have parts of the fragments of uranium breaks off as it enters and goes through. The uranium rod emits alpha, beta, and gamma radiation and X-ray radiation. The alpha particle is a 4.15 MeV particle. That's 4.15 million electron volts. Now, the intercellular voltage, the voltage that your cell operates biologically, is 10 electron volts. So when that cell is bombarded by an alpha particle at 4.5 million electron volts, it doesn't have a good day. We have all kinds of other problems. We have the beta particle and the gamma rays, the X-rays. Now, we've actually measured the ionizing radiation emissions from a DU rod within, say, 4 to 6 inches at over 300 millirems per hour. Now, that radiation is continuous. So you get a fragment of DU into your body that's emitting at over 300 millirems per hour. Or if you're holding the rod in your hand, it's over 300 millirems per hour.
Because depleted uranium has significant chemically toxic effects on the environment and human body, and also because of its higher density even in comparison with lead, it is 1.7 times denser than lead, it has become of wide use in production of armor-piercing and bunker-buster munitions. The components of these armor-piercing and bunker-buster weapons are shaped into long darts weighing more than 4 kilograms, a large proportion of which is DU. In order to increase the resistance of penetrators against corrosion, they are made as an alloy of DU and other metals like titanium or molybdenum.
What parts of Iraq do you think that they are contaminated with depleted uranium weapons?
Really, in 1991 war, at that time, the bulk of depleted uranium was dropped on the western part of Basra, and about 300 or more than 300 tons are dropped at the western part of Basra and on the borders between Basra, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia.
I done many measurements, and the radioactivity still today, because uranium has a very long half-life, 4.5 billion years. So he will stay more than billion years in the nature.
Long time,
yes, very long time.
I'm particularly concerned about depleted uranium. It's a rather strange substance in many ways. It has a whole range of properties which, in my view, merit considerable attention. Firstly, it's a chemical toxin. Secondly, it's a chemical carcinogen. Thirdly, it's a radiological carcinogen. And fourthly, it's an endocrine disruptor.
What kind of patients do you have in your ward here?
We treat almost all cases of cancers in children. Sometimes we could not receive the brain tumor cases because we don't have radiotherapy.
That there is plenty of evidence out there that depleted uranium should not be used in munitions, and that on the precautionary principle, it should be, all use should be stopped, and people in those areas where it has been used should receive advice and be aware.
Are there any evidences, or have you seen the ICBUW, seen any evidences of the health effects of depleted uranium in those affected countries?
I think what we have seen has been an increase in certain types of cancer, particularly in areas of Iraq, which are usually associated with radiation exposure, specifically lymphoma, leukemia, and to an extent breast cancer. At the same time, other cancers have decreased, but these ones which have usually tied in with radiation exposure have increased. We've also seen anecdotal reports of an increase in birth defects, and specifically birth defects which hadn't really been common and hadn't really been seen before the use of uranium weapons in Iraq in the first Gulf War in 1991 and then in 2003.
Victims of the depleted uranium weapons.
Yeah.
We're going to interview with the head of this hospital in Basra.
Okay.
And I sent an email to them. They said that they have higher risk of cancer and congenital malformation. And they have a very sad saying in Basra. They say that when they have a newborn child, they no longer say if it's a boy or girl. They ask that is he or she is alive or healthy or not, because many of them have congenital malformation.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Dreadful.
Can you please take
Yes,
these?
of course, yes. Poor thing. Oh dear.
The uranium particles could move with the winds, with the sands, and it might spread to thousands of kilometers. So in 1991, about, according to the estimation of some of the researchers. They said it's 45% of people who were living in Basra were contaminated at that time. And you know, the contamination usually occurred during the first 3-4 weeks after dropping the depleted uranium.
Where was the most contaminated area in Iraq?
Basra.
Which city? Basra.
Yeah, and also the water samples showed very high level of contamination.
منين انت؟ بصرة. شنو مرضك؟ وين؟
gastric cancer.
gastric cancer. الان چند وقته که بیماری داره؟
من امتى صار عندك هذا السرطان؟ هذا 3 ماه.
3 ماه. Well, there are some reports by either international NGOs or Iraqi doctors that the rate of cancer is increased since 1991. Do you confirm that?
Yes, we noticed that after the second Gulf War, 1991, we noticed increase after 4 or 5 years, increase in the incidence of our cancer patients. Yeah.
And what do you think about the cause of this increase?
We don't have any new event in Iraq except the war. We think that the war is the cause, and the weapon used upon Iraq was the cause of this increased incidence of cancer.
When the US and its allies attacked Iraq in 19th of March 2003, the use of DU munitions increased to a massive scale. The resulting death and destruction brought grave consequences that were exposed in front of the eyes of all the people in the world. In addition to suffering caused by the conventional bloodshed in this war, the use of DU in Iraq raised the death rate of children and the incidence rate of leukemia in women and children in southeastern Iraq and around Basra enormously. The source of the DU was from destroyed tanks, burned armoured vehicles and buildings destroyed by DU munitions, as well as the remains of the munitions themselves, which emit radioactive DU dust for long periods of time following the end of hostilities. When combined with the arid weather in Iraq, these toxic particles disperse over a vast area, affecting people miles away in other regions of Iraq and neighbouring countries, who, in the coming years, will breathe in huge amounts of this dust. Do these silent particles emitted from cold and evil volcanoes truly settle on our today and future, our flesh, blood and breath?
اینجا نگیر